Hey guys, welcome. I've been asked a lot of questions on the F14 here, so I want to do a quick video, show you guys the mod, some of the lessons I learned along the way, and some of the things that I've done to improve the Freewing F14 dual 80 mil. So why don't we take a look underneath, kind of get started and go through some of this stuff. So one of the first things that I did was start back here at the rear stabs. Had a lot of play in it right out of the gate, so play in the servos up here and then play in this stab. So if you were to actually try and wiggle this thing back and forth, you would see that the thing had a lot of slop in there, and then also had a lot of slop up and down. And although they say it's normal and it's okay, I chose not to fly like that. So I tried to do a lot of things to shim that rod that's on the inside of here. Some of the suggestions on RC groups and stuff like that, they talked about some aluminum tape and stuff. What I found that was really cool, that worked really well, is right here. So just give you that part number. It's a set of Traxxas T-Max wheel bearings. So you can use that part number. You need 2 per side. And what I actually did was take a Dremel tool and cut out inside of these pockets right here. So those wheel bearings actually fit perfectly over that shaft. So I notched out that pocket, dropped the wheel bearings in there, and then I slid the horizontal stabs over the top of that thing. I put in the collar just as you know, factory advised. And once everything was set up on there and was lined up, then you epoxy these in, which you just laid some, 5-minute, 15-minute epoxy, whatever you want to use. Drop that stuff down in there, let it harden up, set overnight, and it absolutely removes all that play out of there, and it still rotates very easily. So no big problem. Dremel tool, couple seconds in there. The other thing is I upgraded the elevator servos. I took out the Freewing elevator servos in there and wind up getting some high-tech digital D85. So the problem is that one works clockwise, and the other one on the other side has to work counterclockwise. So the only way you can do that is by reprogramming these things. And the newer version, high-techs, the D85Gs, you're going to actually need the new style programmer, because this is what it's going to take to communicate with it. The old style programmer for those high techs doesn't work and doesn't communicate with the thing anymore. So I tried using this, didn't work out, so we had to go to the new version. Just reverse one of the servos digitally and program it, and then it worked really well. So one of the other things that I did underneath is simply remove this cover, and then we cleaned up all that rat's nest wiring in there, and it's kind of hard to see and stuff, but made sure that stuff is all cleaned up and kind of just assorted a little bit. That's a very small mod. The other thing is as you saw with the RC Geek, he also filled not only where on the inside where those servos are, so that way the airflow through it can actually travel through the tunnel and it's not wasted thrust. He did it on the other side with the motors using some hot glue and some tape here. So I'm going to go to an old fuselage I had that I kind of beat up in all the learning processes here, just to show you. Now this one's gross, and we learned some lessons about not flying off wet grass and things like that along the way. But if you pull those covers off out of here, and you actually take the fans out on the back sides of the fan assemblies, take out 4 screws, lift that thing up, lay some big thick wide underneath from here back pieces of packing tape and let them sit in there. Then put your fans in, so that way the edge of the tape is pinched under the fan and it lays in here. And then you can go ahead and set your covers on, and you can do that, notch around the wiring here, and then you can just lay them to perfectly seal that. And then once you bolt your fan back in, that protects the edge, so there's no lifting up of the edge and blowing the tape out and then blocking your thrust. And then what I simply do is I grab a carbon fiber rod, and here you can kind of see what I use. I'll actually go through the back side of the fan in this way. Once the fans are installed, just use that thing and come up on the inside and actually press that packing tape in there to get it to seal. And that way you're not adding a ton of weight, but it's also sealing up those areas and doesn't have wasted thrust. So I fly off of grass. The field is not super smooth, and I have in the back a Bayhawk from FMS, and also the E-Flite Viper. They fly really well off the grass. This thing's bigger and heavier. It takes a lot more thrust to get this thing going, and really not made to handle the grass real well, but some modifications that are out there definitely help. So that was in the back. Now here for the landing gear, if you simply go ahead and take out in the landing gear, there's going to be 2 screws, one on each side there, and then one on the back side. There's 2 springs in there and then a little washer. And I know guys are spacing these out, but all it does is just simply compress the springs even more. If you want a little bit more tension out of these, pull those screws out, remove this part of the shaft, and simply stretch the springs. Grab each side of them, pull them, make them a little bit longer, and put them back in until you can actually receive the desired tension there on those things. So up here at the front, I really haven't done a lot for the nose gear. It's held up rather well, and you can see as I fly off grass there's some garbage there. Now I know that some guys had some issues breaking that strut. This one on this model is held up well. I do have one ready to go as a spare. I had purchased a couple from Freewing. They're like next to nothing, and I inserted a carbon fiber rod, and then I used a little extra glue on the inside of there, so that way it's a little bit more sturdy and it holds up if you get to banging that thing around too hard. But otherwise everything else is held up. This thing now has a dozen flights on it on this fuselage, and like I said, the last one I beat up in the process. So now the other side of this thing. Now I know that RC Informer has done a lot with some really cool plates and stuff like that. You know, really designed well, looks really cool. I was looking for something that's a cheaper, easier fix. So let me see if I can go ahead and bear with me while I flip this thing over and remove the stand so I could show you the top. All right, so let's take a look at the top of this thing. So you can see from up here, this is my rat's nest, the wiring underneath. This thing looks pretty stock, you can't really tell. So one of the problems is that weak spot right above the landing gear that literally sits in that block, as the RC Informer said, tucks underneath this metal plate right here. The first fuselage I had actually split there. I tried an I-beam, a couple different things, split again. So what I found that I did on this one, it's worked really, really well. It held up on the last one eventually, but there's just a lot of weight added there to the plane, which kind of sucked. So went with a new fuselage after I had a problem with the gear doors in the front, and it was just cheaper and easier to start over from scratch and do it one time and be done with everything. So if you're flying off grass, save yourself the trouble, do it first, right? So one of the things I did was literally cut a 3/16 sheet of ball supply in this shape, and this thing literally runs everywhere that I have painted gray right here, this dark gray, and it actually comes in here just a little bit. So this thing is literally that shape, and I left about 3/16 of a foam edge right there. This wooden ply comes all the way up here. I made a notch in the ply around where that carbon fiber rod was. The carbon fiber rod has literally been removed for now and cut, and I'll show you that in a second. So what I did is I then took a Dremel with a flat bit, and I constantly just back and forth worked this foam. Try not to go too deep, but I literally went just deep enough all the way across like you're mowing the grass until this whole plate butts up against the aluminum here, comes over, runs down and back into here. And I basically kept grooving out that foam until this plywood plate laid in there flush with the foam all the way across. If you have to, you can take a little surface sander and come right across it later and smooth that so your sweep wings actually come across there without binding. And what'll happen is this plastic plate that's underneath here, this plywood plate's going to sit over the top of it and support it, and now it pushes all that tension all the way out through here instead of it being focused in this one area, which is the carbon fiber rod holding it. So what I did then is you get some clear Gorilla Glue. Let me grab some of this stuff. I'll show you guys what this looks like. So this is clear Gorilla Glue, works really well. Put a nice liberal coat over the foam. Put this plate in there, put some weights on it, a little bit of tension, let it sit overnight. You have to use a little bit of moisture with that glue to get it really kicking, and that thing will absolutely become rock solid all the way through there. So it's probably a $5 fix or so. The carbon fiber rod now you can see better on the other side. I trimmed it and I actually notched out the plywood right here, and then I glued that thing fast in the inside of there just to help reinforce that support going all the way across, which ends there and still kind of glued onto that plate. So I'm not thinking the carbon fiber rod's doing a ton at this point, but now this mounting block that was only this big, and what happens is the back of this is actually so heavy when you land hard, it just kind of snaps it and breaks the foam right there. And all that force is now distributed over this whole ply plate. And then simply when it comes down to repainting, not a huge deal. You can go over to Lowe's, get yourself some Valspar, bring them over paint chips sample that's about the size of a quarter, or I just grabbed a couple, you know, panels or pieces and I brought that over. They mixed me up some of that dark stuff, and then I have one for the lighter color, and it actually, when it dries, believe it or not, that's perfect. So you can put this stuff on with a brush and you really can't tell much. So as far as what's in the battery bay mod, just as RC Geek said, a lot of the RC Geek programming has stayed the same, but pretty much, well, that's it. So got about a dozen flights on it now. Haven't swept the wings in it yet. Plan on doing that here soon. Just wanted to get all the other bugs worked out with the flaps and the mixes and everything else. It's a pretty technically complicated plane. So those are my fixes in the back. The landing gear, these by far are the most important to the plane, and relocated the receiver. So the rest of the small mods that RC Geek recommended, the plywood plate and former that goes all the way from the front to the back, the battery bay modification here is absolutely necessary. I run two 5500 milliamp roaring top packs, 70Cs, and they do have to go all the way back in there. Otherwise it's too nose heavy. You want it a little tail heavy to get off the ground in the grass, just a little bit, not much. So so that's kind of it for the modifications on the Freewing F14. If you have any other questions, man, please feel free to reach out. Catch you at the field.